Hello guys, David here, founder of SuperThread, and welcome to my devlog. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about one of my computer heroes, even though he wasn't a computer person, but he's been very, very influential in the way we do things in the computer world. And in fact, I hope to do a series of videos on my computing heroes and computer science heroes, even though some of them may not even have seen a computer or the computer wasn't invented when they were doing their work. But nevertheless, they've been very, very influential in the computer world. Without further ado, let's begin. So my first hero is a Japanese engineer. His name is Taiichi Ohno, and this guy has been so important and influential to the way we live, to the modern world, that none of us can actually imagine how huge this guy is. He's the guy who invented the Toyota manufacturing system, and I properly came across this guy when I was reading a book called The Machine That Changed the World. And in this book, which was properly researched and financed, the authors went to different car factories around the world. And they realized that somehow in Japan, they can deliver cars for half the cost, they can build them in half the time, in half the space, and with half the defects compared to the American companies. And they were trying to find out how this was actually the case. And one of the most important people who actually played a role in actually achieving this is a guy called Taiichi Ohno. And after the war, Japan was devastated and they didn't have the money that the Americans had. For each car part, what the Americans would do is they would have a separate machine, a stamping machine, which would make a different part. This was kind of invented by Henry Ford. The way it worked is that the worker himself or herself was basically treated as a resource. They weren't really part of the family. And Taiichi Ohno realized that Japan couldn't afford, first of all, to build all these stamping machines, and that what they had to do is use what they had. So what he actually invented is a way of actually modifying the stamping machine to actually be stamping a different part very, very quickly. For example, for the American companies, this process would take something like a day, and he actually got it down to a minute. And what he then invented was a system called the Kanban system, which is basically the pull system. So we're all familiar with Kanban boards. We use tools like Trello. What the actual Kanban system did for the Toyota company is a visual signal that a task can actually go to the next stage by the actual resource for the person who is going to do that task being available. So this basically changed the world more than anything. So now when we talk about robots taking people's jobs, it's not really robots, I think. It's basically the lean manufacturing, which has made companies so efficient so that they can actually build products which are so reliable and so fast, which means basically the jobs are gone because the companies are simply more efficient because of the lean manufacturing, which Taiichi Ohno more or less invented. Anyway, thereafter, when the American companies realized this Toyota system, they went in, tried copying this. One of the other things, a very important thing that amongst many, many things which this guy invented, was the idea to give people safety in their jobs, which means that they weren't just treated as a disposable resource, they were treated as part of the family. And also when it came to suppliers, he actually would bring them in early on so they could actually participate in the actual designing of the parts which would be needed for the cars. So nothing really earth-shattering or new here, but just a lot of common sense and just kind of having good intent, which is very, very important. He invented many, many things, but one of the other things that was actually very important was the idea that the manager shouldn't be managing the system. The system itself should be managing the work, which is basically lean production, which means that you should be reacting in short term based on the way the things are going currently, rather than actually having this kind of overarching kind of manager trying to kind of do waterfall. Then in software, bizarrely enough, we are kind of quite behind. The car companies have been doing this for many, many decades. In software, I think we still very much struggle in implementing proper lean kind of production. But we got a hold of this idea, I would say around 2005, properly, when Steve Blank wrote a book called The 4 Steps to the Epiphany, and then his student Eric Ries wrote a book called The Lean Startup, and that was inspired by the lean manufacturing. So basically this is directly transferable into the software world. Taiichi Ohno is one of these guys who is not very well known, but this guy has had a huge influence on the world of manufacturing and producing products, and especially now in the world of software. So Taiichi Ohno is my first computer science hero. So it's been a while since my last devlog, but that's because we've been working super hard on finishing the early access version of SuperThread that can actually be used by other companies. We're going to start with a very few companies and onboard them and see how things go, and then eventually down the line we'll be opening to more and more companies. The reason why it's been taking long is because we made some changes in terms of database, but now we feel much more confident about actually using the databases that we're going to be using, and things are going to be way more stable, and there's going to be less chances of things flaking out. If you want to make good software, you simply need to think and take a lot of time in actually deciding on very important decisions that are very hard to reverse, and which is what we did. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys in our next video.